I will now call to order the Town Council work session Monday, March 25th, 2024 at 4 p.m. in council chambers at 150 East Monroe Street, Wytheville, Virginia. First thing on the agenda would be to approve of the agenda. I will need a motion.
So we approve the agenda.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, it will be a roll call vote. And we'll start over here with Councilwoman Johnson.
Johnson. Atkins, aye.
Taylor, aye.
Patterson, aye.
Gilman, aye.
And the one item on the agenda is a discussion regarding the fiscal year 2024-2025 budget. Mr. Freeman.
Thank you, Taylor. Ron, if you get started there. The focus of this presentation will be primarily, if not exclusively, on the general fund's capital and one-time expenditures. A couple of months ago, we sent out notice to all the department heads to be preparing their fiscal year 24-25 budgets, and inclusive in their submittals were all of their capital and one-time requests. There's a little difference in how we budget for capital and one-time and how we define capital and one-time than maybe how the auditors treat capital. We treat them the same because these are non-recurring expenses. These are not operational costs. These are things that come up periodically. We define capital for budgeting purposes as anything over $5,000 that has a lifespan of anticipated lifespan of over 5 years. We also include in our, the way we categorize these things, we include things like engineering studies and those types of requests. So everything in this presentation today will deal with just the general fund, with the exception of one request that would come out of the perpetual care fund for cemeteries. The items that you'll see today are items that have been reviewed by Budget and Finance Committee, and I would say as of today are anticipated for recommendation. All of it, is under discussion. We're meeting every Tuesday for 2+ hours. So right now, these are the items that the committee anticipates recommending, I would say, but that's always subject to change. First item on here, and Josh is here because he has a number of things on here, and if there are any questions that I'm unable to answer, I'll ask Josh to help me out. These are the pitching mounds that are used right now have been in use for about 8 years. They're also used by the middle school and recreation teams. As you can see, these things are beginning to fall apart on us. The cost of these items is about $7,500. They seem to be well used and well past their useful lifespan. These can.
Where are they located? Where's that picture?
Yeah.
Like it was up there.
Well, they're not on the field right now. They pulled them off the field, but I didn't know what you meant. Yeah, okay. But if we don't buy new ones, those will be right back out there, and if they're not out there today.
Mr. Freeman, what
Yes, ma'am.
page is that on in our packet?
The presentation was not ready for you in your packet. I apologize. I was still working
This is
on
all
it.
we have for this meeting.
I'm sorry, I don't have a printout for you all, but I can get it printed for you. Are you not able to see it? It's right behind you there if you want to look. I didn't.
Oh, it's my copy. That's good. That's fine. That's fine.
So a lot of this stuff came from Josh had actually put some of this together for the Budget and Finance Committee. So a lot of this is adapted from there. So I think that may be what Ms. Johnson has is actually from Josh's presentation. But if you have trouble seeing it, it's right behind you, and I apologize for not having it printed out.
I would like to ask a question.
Sure.
Can they be given a copy of all the information prior to any of the motion?
Certainly.
They need to have a copy of everything that we have reviewed.
Sure. But there will be no voting tonight. There won't be for another month. So we'll get there. Replace the expedition. This is the expedition that is used by Parks and Recreation. It's a 20-year-old vehicle with 168,000 miles and is completely rusted in numerous places. The request is actually to phase that vehicle out, replace it with a minivan that they would be able to use for any day-to-day needs that they have, and they would also give them the ability to utilize it for some of their programs that involve transporting small groups. The request here is for $30,000 for a minivan.
Is that actually in operation right now?
It is.
Has it been inspected lately?
It gets inspected every year.
I just want to make sure with that much rust. Like
Yeah,
a frame or something, but that's okay. Thank you.
McWayne Pool, it is legally required that we have 2 ADA entrances into the pool. This would be a portable ADA step that could be installed at McWayne Pool. The cost for this is $6,700. This is, of course, a safety and as well as a legal matter. So we think this is kind of a no-brainer here. Some of these I'm going to zip through, so we may be done in here in 30 minutes unless you all have a lot of questions. Here's probably one of the larger improvements that's anticipated is renovations to McWayne Pool. You're looking at pictures of the gutter system that's pushing up on 20 years old. Right now, there's difficulty getting it repaired because of the age of the system. Replacement parts are no longer available, and the concrete supporting, I'll say this, the gutter system is basically deteriorating, and it'll basically all have to kind of be repaired at the same time. Josh, what are we looking at there? Leaf debris and just...
you're looking inside of the gutter system there. That's what you're seeing. The area that's deteriorating is kind of under the tile area, and that's where the gutter system drops in. Basically, what's holding that gutter system in pressure square. Being held in.
Like when the pool's full, is that what you're saying?
So when would that be replaced? During summertime or fall, winter, spring?
Ideally, this would be hit as soon as this
At the end of the season. Okay.
Right. So this would be a July 1, theoretically a July 1 fiscal year start, and they would finish out the pool season closing in August, I anticipate, or early September, and then try to get the work set up for immediately after. In addition to that, much of the furnishing down at McWayne Pool is in need of rehab. The request is for $15,500 to have the weld sandblasted, restrapping of 50 lounge chairs, a couple of tables and chairs, and 6 new umbrellas in there. That stuff's getting in pretty rough shape. Again, some of this is pretty tangible, pretty easy to get through. So I don't mean to plow through it and have us done in 15 minutes, but if you have any questions, just stop me. The therapy pool UV system is also in need of repair, and at this point, basically replacement. This would allow for the reduction of some chemical consumption. There's a note there, especially during an AFR, which I had to look up. I'll spare you what it means, but occasionally certain things enter the system that should not, and typically from children. And a system like this will allow us to utilize less chemical to deal with an AFR.
This is an outside pool. Is that the same? Or is this
This is the indoor therapy pool. Therapy pool.
Yeah.
But children do get in it.
Yeah, they do.
This one's a little trickier because I will say that cost is a moving target. Right now, Parks and Recreation is evaluating the conversion of one of the racquetball spaces. These spaces over the years have the utilization of them has gone down precipitously. We can ask Josh, but I would say the emergence of pickleball and other racket options, I think, is really knocked down the interest in racquetball. What the ask here is to convert that space to additional training space and additional space for classes. I did look up in our last financial report and include as the last bullet on here a note that we budgeted about $60,000 in revenue for classes, and we already stand, as we sit here today, at $75,000 for the fiscal year on classes. So they're doing a fantastic job with their classes and offerings, way over what was anticipated. This would allow us to program some additional classes. Now, we've got it in there as phase one because the total ask was actually about $32,000. So that $20,000 will vary based on what we think can be done in 1 year versus what can be done over 2, and effectively offer what is being suggested, if that makes sense. We want to make sure that $20,000 gets them to a point that would actually allow them to offer the classes. If it doesn't, we'll need to modify that number a little bit.
So you said it could possibly go up, Mr. Freeman?
The total ask was $32,000, and we were trying to work out doing it over a couple of cycles, just trying to tamp down costs a little bit. So rec department hasn't had a good chance, hasn't had time to really evaluate whether or not the 20 will do it. That's what we came out of committee suggesting, but we've got to give them a chance to see if that will get them to a place where they can actually offer classes in the space. If it doesn't, we'll modify that number and take it back to the committee. So this one's sort of been the elephant in the room, I would say, for a few years now. Back in 1993, the town had an engineering firm or Dewberry and Davis evaluate the Withers Park bleachers. I don't know if the repairs that were suggested back in 1993 were ever really made. It does not really seem to appear that they were. Out of growing concern a couple of years ago, we asked another firm to reevaluate these bleachers, and they came back and recommended that we close them to the public. That's what you see in the picture on the top left. If you've been down there, you've seen it. Public Works was able to put up some fencing across the bottom and then some signage to tell people to stay off of them. The pictures below on the bottom are from that report 3 years ago, showing significant structural issues. The picture on the lower right shows some huge cracks. You can go up and look at the seating. I was over there today and looked at it. There's some really wide gaps in the concrete between the sections of the seating. The other two pictures show spalling concrete and rusted through, that's beginning to rust out, the reinforced steel that's inside of that structure. The cost to rehab this thing is astronomical. We don't have a good sense for it, but basically the engineers that looked at it a couple of years ago said if you just took the 1993 cost evaluation and escalated that for inflation, you'd be looking at just an astronomical number to rehab these bleachers. We did get 2 quotes last year for their demolition and removal. That $32,000 is a little bit more than what was proposed last year. One of the offers, I think, was it at 25 or 28? I got a little confused about the number, so I've bumped it up a little bit more than what they've said. I think we had 25 in there last year. They told us a 10% increase, but I just bumped it up in anticipation that it could be even a little bit more.
And would that have to come out of their budget,
Whose budget?
like the rec department?
Well, when you think about it like that. Like all of this comes out of the general fund, so we would program it into their budget. We would appropriate it through the rec department's budget.
Is there anywhere that it could be taken from besides there?
Well, we wouldn't be taking anything from them. We would just, when you all appropriate the numbers, we have to put it into a budget for. I mean, it could go into Public Works, but I would rather keep it in Parks and Recreation because it shows us a true cost of operating a park, if you will, or the true cost of owning or operating parks. If you put it in Public Works, we could. Engineering could manage the project, but the true cost is a park cost.
I'm just saying, if you had to go down here and shave off a couple of these and, can't get everything at one time, I would hate for that to be a factor since that's really a safety issue. I personally wouldn't want to see that come out of their budget.
I do recall, I believe it can come out of the operating budget. The way that it was explained to me that the rec department has a fund And I know that you said it was all in one lump
It is.
sum, but if they have a separate fund for repairs to the rec department, that should not create a hole in our budget by giving them what they need. However, it was discussed that it would come out of the operating budget because it's a service.
I think there's a lot of confusion about that.
Well, that's what was said at 10:26 in the meeting.
So I'm not arguing with you. I just still think there is confusion about what's happening. So the community, the town set aside money many years ago out of the general fund. They basically assigned part of the town's fund balance to what was called the community center fund. It is just segregated funds that are within the general fund. It really matters not whether you take it from that or you take it. That's all sitting in the general fund. So it's just an accounting exercise to deduct it from either there or just regular general fund balance. It's all the same money at the end of the day. You don't, and I think that what Ms. Atkins is saying is really, that's just a matter of however you want to characterize it, of trading off one project for another. You don't really have to trade off anything. We're not asking them to come up with the money. It's whether or not the council wants to appropriate these funds or not.
That's what I'm saying. Yes,
Yeah.
sir. I'll just say, for instance, if there's like this, this list and we agree on, say, 5 of them. I mean, that's just me. I just would hate to see that in there and we have to do that for safety reasons versus fixing the therapy pool system.
But you don't have, it's not an either or. It's just, whatever these projects you want to do, you would appropriate the funds for it. It's not really an either or. It's not really something that we're saying, Parks and Rec, you got this much money, so you can't have this, or we had to do. You see what I'm saying?
Okay, no, that's fine. That's fine. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Johnson, did I answer your questions? I know it's confusing, and it's difficult for me to explain it, to be honest with you.
I made sure that I took notes to make sure that I had clarity when we met. And I know that it was said that the community center fund is available for improvement. The only thing that it's been used for is storage for the meeting center, and it has availability so that we can, and it doesn't have to come out of our capital. So we have the availability to make the improvements that need to be made without that coming out of our capital fund. That is the way that it was explained when we were in our meeting on the 27th. So then I was told that it was all one big fund. When I asked about it creating a hole in our budget, but if they have funds that are available for improvements, it shouldn't create a hole in our budget. We should be able to make the improvements that need to be made for the recreation center without it being a problem if they have the available funding.
Right, and I still think there's confusion, and I'm going to try again. So it won't create a hole. The town has money that the only money that we're authorized to spend right now, right, is what you all have appropriated. Everything else sits in basically just like your household savings account. You will have to pull money from a savings account to make these capital improvements. It's not, it doesn't ding them or their operations. We're not cutting their operations or other projects to do it, but we will have to take money out of savings to do these capital projects. And then is it from the community center fund or just the regular general fund? That's just an accounting exercise. It's all the same money. It's just that the community center had a set aside that my understanding is that they thought they would pay down debt service with that or could pay down debt service with that. But we would never pay down debt service right now when that financing is on like a 2.45 or 2.75% note, and we're earning 5.5% on our savings. So it won't create a hole in anyone's budget. it's basically you're just going to have to appropriate the use of reserves. It will either say use of reserves, it'll just be uncategorized, or use of reserves community center, but it will be from a savings account. Either way.
And you said use of reserves, right?
Correct, because I would anticipate that we'll be using reserves to balance the budget as well. Any more questions about the bleachers?
But I think I agree with everybody else that that's a must-do type of project because of the unsafety of it and all that. And then council can decide what their wishes are going forward for that piece of property. Right?
Yeah, certainly. Okay, lighting replacement. The community center has, looks like to me, about a total of about 35 lights that need to be replaced. The picture on the bottom left is from the 4th Street Civic Center. 5 out of 12 of the indoor lights in there are no longer working. 50% of the lights at McWayne Pool are not working. Unfortunately, many of these cannot be replaced with in-kind replacements, so it'll have to be ballast and bulb replacements for all of these. So you're looking at about $36,000. Am I looking at that right?
Is it dark in there?
In which one?
Where they have multiple lights?
4th Street Civic Center. I've not been in there when it was at night, so I couldn't comment on that, Josh.
They're spaced out enough right now that it's not causing a hindrance.
Okay.
But they do. Ones in the pool, we're able to replace all the center lights with LED this year. That has alleviated some of that. The issue that we have is we get so much daylight from the light from the windows on top. Whether it's a cloudy day or if it's dark.
That's when you notice it.
That's when you notice it.
Thank you.
Okay, the basketball management system currently this unit is in a maintenance mode, which is never a good thing. That's like your check engine light coming on. Court management system would allow them to raise and lower goals to preset heights. It would allow us to get the courts more efficiently changed over, especially when you're changing age groups, that sort of thing, and just allow for a more efficient operation of our basketball programs.
Mr. Freeman, can you go back to one slide? I missed 2 figures, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Thank you. 16. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any questions about the court management system? This is an item that you all saw one or two meetings ago. This is basically just included in our CIP, which is the 2 patrol cars. PD has now ordered these, and the council approved them to issue those POs this year. For next year, this cost includes full upfit to give them their all the additional things that need to be attached to the car to make it actually a police car. So I won't go into all the details on that. It's a long breakdown, but it's the cage and the light package and all those sorts of things. This would give them 2 new ones. Last year, you all approved the PD to replace their service weapons. They were also approved for lights and sights for those weapons. This year, they're asking for the lights and sights for the backup weapons. I do believe Mr. Hash told me that he anticipates this being DCJS funded. The cost of this would be $12,050.
Was he coming this evening too, or no?
I don't know. Any questions about that? You're looking at pictures, a little sampling of the flooring in the police department. Some of it has these 12 by 12 tiles, and some of it has this faux laminate or faux wood laminate flooring that you see on the right that's all buckled up. The flooring in the PD is quite bad and well overdue for replacement. They have gotten quotes to get this flooring replaced. That cost us $25,000. We do have some questions about whether or not we need to do some asbestos testing on these tiles. We may do that if they are going to disturb them. It just depends. I believe that the PD was looking at just going over top of these things.
I wouldn't want to see that. No, sir. I'd like to see it tested. Because I know several years ago they had issues with asbestos, and I'd
Okay.
like to,
And we can test it.
for safety for everybody.
Sure.
So that can be tested.
It can, and you know, the thing about asbestos is it is an inert. It's inert as long as it's not what's called friable, which is airborne. That's why in a lot of places they just leave it alone and go over top of it, because then you're not messing. You're not messing with it.
I remember when they remodeled the police department and they had the officers walking through the plastic and everything, and that wasn't pretty sight.
If in fact we do remediate or mitigate, well, the asbestos will have to figure out where they'll operate during that, but we'll figure that out.
Like I said, I saw where they used to walk through, and that's not a good situation. Just plastic up and tape, and I think it's a hazard.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, Ms. Atkins, that may be why it might be more. And we'll talk to the professionals about it and have them render an opinion on it. We typically use HDH Technical to do the testing, and we can always get them to render an opinion. They'll test it, but also tell us whether or not we're better off to just leave it where it is. That's a common approach, is just leave it alone, don't mess with it, because then you don't have to evacuate the building. They just put the flooring over top of it. You leave the old flooring alone. And as long as you're not cutting it, it's an inert material.
I thought we did discuss that we would have that checked.
Yeah, we will.
In our
But then we still have to make a decision as to whether or not we're going to try to have it removed. Because if you have it removed, you're going to have to evacuate the building for an operation that's 24/7. That's can get pretty tricky.
I know they did it before, so.
Yeah, and I would never, ever, ever want them to be anywhere near
I'm glad.
that operation.
Because that happened before, so.
PD has also requested a utility trailer. They do a lot of street blocking, barricades, barrels, cones, various things for a number of our special events. This would allow them to basically load the trailer up and I think basically keep it loaded and ready to go. Right now, they're doing a lot of transporting back and forth to a storage area when those events are going on, and this would allow a much more efficient operation for our special events. I don't know the size or any of the details on the trailer. They just gave me the number.
So they don't use one now? Borrow one?
What I have seen them doing is a pickup truck. Now that doesn't, I've seen them using a pickup truck, and it could even be a personal vehicle. But I can ask those questions. But they don't have a trailer. Even if they're using a trailer, it's not a trailer dedicated to this. So they're loading and unloading, loading and unloading, loading and unloading over and over and over. I believe the intent here would be to load all the stuff that you need for those events on the trailer and leave it on the trailer.
Would that be stored somewhere?
Yes, but I don't know where. Maybe the infamous Area 51, but I'll have to ask.
Just not at somebody's house, so.
I can't imagine why it would be at anyone's house. Gear and hose dryer, this is a fire and EMS request. The fire and EMS does have basically some aid to localities funding that they get every year. I think that went up a little bit. It's anticipated to be about $37,000 for next year. The gear and hose dryer would allow them, after their equipment gets really wet, especially after fighting a fire, to get that equipment dried back off. The rack in the center is for hanging hose and drying it. Right now, to dry hose, they're rolling it all out in a parking lot and air drying it, which can take a considerable amount of time if you have high humidity or you have cooler temperatures where things just don't dry out as quickly. That price will vary depending on the unit they get. They spec'd an $8,000 unit, but they're looking to see if their building and the electrical system can accommodate a little larger dryer, and we'll wait to hear back from them on that.
Is that what we had talked about that day? Okay, thank you.
Another request from Fire EMS. These are examples of utility vehicles with medic beds. These would be used during special events. These would be could be used in unique rescue operations. They are basically requesting that they use some of their EMS donations, their aid to locality funding, and then the ability to trade in a small tractor and an ATV that get very little usage currently. Basically this request, and the next one would all come out of their aid to localities funding, current EMS donations, and the trade-in value for the small tractor and ATV that they have right now. This would be the last of those items. Again, using aid to localities funding, this is just an example of a truck I was able to find. What they're looking for is a truck that would replace an existing Dodge pickup truck that they have right now. And this would go to the battalion chief.
Would the Dodge be used through the town, or to go to the fire department have a different
I believe the Dodge is actually going to get, I may have misspoke. The Dodge is actually going to get traded back into Enterprise. I believe it has a $16,000 or $17,000 trade-in value, and they're wanting to switch that Dodge truck out for a Durango. So this would be an additional vehicle.
Okay, run that by me one more time. The truck that we have now,
I believe is going to get traded out for a Durango. I believe it's either a Jeep or a Dodge that we have now. I apologize, I don't have it all memorized.
And you said it was about $16,000.
I think that's the trade-in value that they've gotten from Enterprise.
So in reality, that there would be two vehicles they'd be getting. Is that right?
Well, the Enterprise one is really a swap.
Okay.
It's a swap out because they're actually reducing the amount of money for their leases, if that makes sense.
So they're going to trade the Dodge in and get another vehicle for the same price of $16,000. Then we're going to look at getting another truck for like $66,000.
Correct.
Okay.
But their aid to localities money is categorical aid. They get it every year and they have to use it. For the last about 10 years, that money, we've turned around and given that ATL money to Wytheville County for a ladder truck that the town and county went in on several years ago. But that payment is off now, so now they've got to purchase equipment every year.
That's good for $16,000. That's a good,
Yeah, and that one again would be a swap out for going back to just like a sport utility, an SUV type vehicle. This would be a totally separate new purchase.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Meeting Center has requested to replace the tables. The example on the left that you see there is in 3 of their classroom/breakout rooms. They currently estimate that they're spending about $8,000. There's other linens in the building, but they're spending about $8,000 a year on linen service. All those white cloths have to be cleaned multiple times a year. These tables are expensive, but it would allow them some additional configuration options that you see in the center and right photos, and then saving about $8,000 a year on the linen service, meaning that in about 7 years, these tables would pay for themselves.
Now, they have asked for this.
This is the second year.
Second year, okay.
Yeah. Come on back. Museums has asked for what I'm characterizing as phase 2 of lighting. This is a project that was funded last year. The amount that was funded last year didn't quite get them as far as they thought it would. So this year, the money that was funded this year is basically getting the underground wiring and conduits and those types of things done for the lighting, and then they're asking for $20,000 to complete their lighting project. That would add 6 30-foot poles for area lighting down there. just for evening events, safety, and that sort of thing.
Can you scroll back one more time? I'm sorry.
Sure. That's just a cut sheet of the light style of the
So
fixture
they've already
itself.
been ordered?
I believe they have. They did, they didn't. I don't think that they budgeted enough money for it. They didn't request enough.
Okay, but if they didn't request enough for it, but we're asking for it, but they've already been ordered.
I believe they have.
Okay.
Is it a case where the lights are there when they need it?
I'm not exactly sure.
That's the case where the lights cover.
Yeah, I think that they didn't have enough money to get it done, but they did, I do believe,
Order.
order it.
So, but council, we're supposed to vote on that. Is that right?
Well, you'll vote on the total budget, yes. And we can bring CIP to you as a separate item. We've been talking about possibly doing that anyway.
I'd like to hold on that.
They also have a lot of drainage issues that's leading to a lot of log rot on the old cabins, and for lack of a better term, I don't know what they're all these different things are. The blacksmith shop and different things. They get inundated. The ground does not lay very well out there, and they've asked for some money to make drainage improvements. I believe they have a quote for this. It is anticipated, although the board has not passed it, that the Homestead Endowment Fund would share this cost with the town. We've asked them to consider that. This would they'd be installing some little box culverts, some French drains, and that sort of thing to try to divert some of this water away from some of the buildings and such. On the left, you have a 1985 Ferguson asphalt roller. I think Mr. Peoples told me he wasn't sure if it would even start anymore. They're asking to replace that with the little Wacker-Neuson RD1 or the RD1211-90 there. I think it's well overdue. I jokingly refer to the one on the left. I mean, the one on the left looks like something you'd see on Fred Flintstone driving. It's pretty rough. The shop also has a flat roof that leaks. Picture on the left shows you the roof that leaks. You can see some standing water on it there. I think they have more issues in the wintertime with snow and ice, but it is an issue that has cropped up for years. They've patched and patched and patched. What they're proposing to do is go back with a pitched roof over top. We've seen some buildings around town that have done this in the last few years. That would allow them just basically the ability to maintain it a little more themselves, get a shingle roof on it. And there's no infrastructure up top. There's no HVAC. There's no limiting factors that would prevent this from being the type of roof that goes back. This is not the exact vehicle, but it is the same make and model, I believe, as our 2019 F-250 that the Building Maintenance and Signalization Department uses. That lease is up, and the buyout for that lease is $5,500. The vehicle is worth well more than that, so that we think this makes perfect sense to go ahead and buy out that vehicle and keep it. So they'll just keep using it. Another utility trailer request. This is actually not a general fund item. This would be from the Perpetual Care Fund, which is dedicated to cemeteries. This is entirely different fund. Basically, it has segregated funds. The Perpetual Care Fund has don't quote me, but approximately $300,000 in it, and that would come out of there. This would allow them to move their mowers between the various cemeteries that we mow and other tools and things that they use around the cemeteries. I think we're about done here. And we are. Let me, before I go onto the calendar, any of these slides that you all want me to back up on, look at a little closer, any questions, can click back through them. That was probably a little quicker than we anticipated.
The one on the $20,000 that we apparently, or
Well,
somebody
it's
ordered,
440. Go ahead.
is there any way that can be looked at and to see if the homestead endowment
Could share costs on that as well.
know to pay for it? Since it would, because that's not in, since they've already been ordered with the date and everything, that would not be appropriate year, I don't think.
I think, are you talking about, so I think it sounds like there's a little confusion about that. So they have ordered the material, they have ordered the lighting, and I think they had budget to cover that, but they didn't have budget to cover the full cost of installation and all that, basically.
Right, I fully understand that.
Okay.
But
So they didn't, what I'm getting at is they didn't order anything that they didn't have money appropriated for. It just was not, it doesn't complete a project.
Right, they just needed more.
Correct.
Right, but we did that in quote, this year's budget. We're actually looking at next year's budget, correct?
Correct.
Okay. If they're already ordered, if I'm not mistaken, it's not next year's budget yet. You know what I'm saying? I mean, to me, the physical year, unless I'm wrong.
Let me go back and get some clarity for you, because I don't think they've ordered anything that they don't have money for sitting there, but I don't think they have enough money to complete the project, if that makes sense.
I mean, that should, to me, and I could be wrong, but that should be taken out, because if it's already ordered for this year's budget on the PO, to me, it just wouldn't make sense to put it on next year's budget, because the PO.
Let me get some clarity on that one.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And we can get a copy of that, you don't mind, of this?
The presentation, certainly.
Thank you.
Any other questions? It's about I think we've got about 15 or 20 minutes. We've got 17 minutes till the next meeting. Last slide was just basically touching on the schedule again. In 2 weeks, we'll have another work session, and in that work session, we'll go over any modifications to this presentation, as well as your water and sewer capital improvements items. And then just basically depending on where we get with budget and finance committees, we'll kind of dictate how much what we present at the next work session. But then a month from tonight, we'll have our first reading. So we've got our work cut out for us. Just note that last one, I've highlighted that Tuesday because May the 27th is a holiday. Okay, any questions? Okay, thank you all.
So we are going to go ahead and close this meeting. And we have